Let's get another question here. Jim, obviously still to this day, Cody Rhodes is a popular topic amongst the listeners.
Still to this day, after all these hours?
I have to say, I'm going to read this. I'm just seeing this now. Here's my exact quote from September 29th, the episode that aired. Someone, Gabriel, in London, England, sent this transcription. I'm going to make a prediction right now. Cody and Brandy are going to be the first two from that initial class of upper echelon executives in wrestling to leave. And I have no doubt in my mind about that. It may happen sooner rather than later. I shouldn't say that. He still has some time left on his contract. But, mark my words, Cody and Brandy are going to be the first people gone, and very few people, outside of maybe Dustin, very few people will miss them. And they haven't really contributed as much as, let's say, even the Bucks and Omega. What does Cody do? So that was what I said on the air a few months before.
I remember you uttering those words from your own chicken lips.
It's almost as if I know what's going to happen in AEW before it happens, but I don't want to upset people who think that we don't know what we're talking about. But Jim, let's get a Cody question right here. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Stephanie. Cody Rhodes was being heavily booed and wasn't getting over with the AEW crowd. Was Tony Khan to blame for that, or was it Cody's fault?
We can't say, because we don't know. I think Cody has to bear some responsibility, because we don't know what Tony was asking anybody to do and what was their own ideas. But we can't know that unless we were in the conversation or one or both of them come out and admit it afterwards. That's with Cody and Tony or anybody else and Tony.
Right.
But having said that, since everybody else supposedly has so much pull over what they do or how their character is presented or their finishes or whatever, you would think that Cody, being one of the highest ranking officials in the company, would have been able to say, no, it's probably not a good idea if we do all this silly shit that we've gone over that led to the fans booing him. If he was on board with all of that, then even if Tony came up with the idea, if Cody did it all willingly, thinking it was a good idea, then Cody's mostly responsible because he's the one that knows the wrestling business. Tony Khan is a rank amateur. Cody Rhodes has been around the business forever, so he should know. I'm not going to sit here and go down the whole list of what we just talked about last week on the program as the reason, whether it be Brandy or the blowback from the tattoo or doing the reality TV or just sounding like a grandiose social climber. The point that I've made and I've still made is that of the executive vice presidents, Cody was the best in-ring pro wrestler, not a fucking ballet dancing gesticulator like Twinkle Toes, or not cosplaying trampoline kids like the Hardley Boys. He's had great matches, and he ought to have in his head what wrestling is and how it's done. So you've taken a guy who should have been cheered by more people than the other guys because he's better at everything than they are. He's a better promo than the Bucks and Twinkle Toes. When he goes, maybe he shouldn't workshop so much, but nobody can deny he speaks better than them on television, and he's a better pro wrestler. The problem has become that he basically apparently was completely blind to the way that everybody was seeing. And part of it is they don't like wrestlers in AEW. The core fan base, they like the fucking gymnasts. And he was probably going to get some blowback there. But from the real wrestling fans who thought, okay, this is our sports-based presentation, not only did they not get that, but they get Cody with these ridiculous, grandiose promos, and the thing with Shaq and Brandy doing everything and being so not only cringeworthy, but also funny to knock it at the same time. All those things he let happen. And that would have been great if he'd have gone with it and turned heel and brought Brandy in to be his manager and have Brandy give Arn a nut shot And then you may potentially have had some people coming over the rail to try to get at those two. All they had to do was, and then Cody could have been what Dan Lambert has been trying to be, which is the one that said, hey, I built this whole company. I put the whole thing together. You think these two grade school kids from Cucamonga could have done this without me? I'm the son of the American dream. And hey, Twinkle Toes, you may have some great matches in Japan somewhere, but you couldn't hang in the big leagues. I've been there and conquered that. And just be an insufferable fucking heel with an insufferable heel wife and potentially an insufferable heel baby.
Don't say that. You can make fun of the dog. Make fun of the dog.
Bring the kid out. They would have booed that kid out of the building if they'd have brought him out. I'm not trying to encourage anybody to boo a dog. That's just going too far. But boo that fucking kid. And they could have said, look, he's the world's most beautiful baby. Nobody else has a baby like this. And make all the parents pissed. If he'd have done that, I'd still be on his side. But instead, they just melted down and off he went.
You know, part of the problem, too, I think, despite all the other stuff you talked about, the outside of the ring stuff, like the appearance on the reality show and the TV show and just everything, the tattoo, forget about all that. You had a guy who came in, at least from a perception standpoint of who was starting AEW, Cody was equal footing with Omega and the Bucks. You could argue Jericho.
Jericho was way ahead of everybody.
No, but
everybody knew who Jericho was. I don't think you can argue that Cody wasn't a bigger mainstream star than
That's not what I'm saying, though.
Twinkle Toes.
I'm saying to the AEW audience, to the people who were there from week one of Dynamite, Cody, in terms of perception, Cody was equal footing with the Elite. He was a member of the Elite. They were all aligned.
Okay, I'll agree with you if you say to the AEW faithful.
To the AEW faithful.
It would be an insult to say he was on the same level as Olivier and the Hardleys to the general public. He's a much bigger name than that because they'd never been on real television before.
However, other than the first few weeks of that show and a few other things like the pandemic speech when they had the first empty arena show, Cody had nothing to do with Omega and nothing to do with the Bucks. It would have been a natural thing at some point. They were going to have that first War Games, remember, but the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to do the Newark show. Even though the Bucks are all doing their own thing with their own friends, and they stay on their part of the show usually, and Omega is tied in with that, but he's kind of doing his own thing with them and his friends, should Tony Khan have said something like, look, I know you guys all want to do something with your friends, but I have Cody here, and I need to do something with him. Kenny, I am going to do a program with you and Cody. Bucks, I am going to do something where you guys turn on him or he turns on you. Something. As opposed to they were kind of aligned and then everyone just went their own way. And Cody was the one guy just left out in the woods. And you could blame Cody for the ideas he was insistent on doing on camera. And you could blame Tony for letting him do that. But Cody also at a certain point didn't have the other top guys in the company to work with.
Well, but that to me was a bonus, not a detriment. We didn't have to see Cody interact with the Hardley boys. What would they have done? And Cody's a grown adult man, full-sized anyway. We didn't have to see Cody with Twinkle Toes because that would have been, I don't know which one of them wouldn't have wanted to work with the other one. Twinkle Toes would know that Cody wasn't going to do a lot of his bullshit because it didn't make any sense. He'll take a big bump, as we saw in the match with Sammy. He set himself on fire. It's not big bumps. It's stupid, illogical, nonsensical, fake bumps. And would that be a clash in styles since Cody was trained in a proper way and Twinkle Toes has absolutely no basics whatsoever? Can't even fucking hit the ropes without doing a little two-step. So did either one of them want to work with the other? Would it have been a clash of styles? Would it have been a four-finger stinker? So I don't see why it was a detriment. Cody was out interacting with the real stars of the company and or the new upcoming stars that they wanted to bury like Anthony Ogogo. I don't think he needed to be interacting with Twinkle Toes and the rest of them. He was actually out in the broader world wrestling different people. That wasn't a problem for me.